Athletes, welcome back. We have got your ultimate party trick and one of your ultimate fitness movements with handstand walking. So we're gonna take you from the basic of basic to our actual handstand walking so that you can show off at parties, you can show off at the beach, or you can dominate in that competition that you've got coming up. We've got TJ joining us today. And what we're gonna do is that we are gonna start with the basics of kicking up. We're gonna give you a couple drills that you can work on the wall, then getting off of the wall, and then getting into the handstand walk itself. So we're gonna start out with getting into our handstand. Now, if you don't have a lot of experience with getting upside down, this is something that you need to practice on a regular basis, 2 to 3 times a week, but not for a super long time. What happens is if you get into this and you do it way too much, you can actually give yourself black eyes by creating some petechia where you bust those blood vessels. So thinking about doing a max of 5 minutes of practice each of those days, 3 times out of the week, is a good amount to shoot for. So what we're gonna do first is that TJ's gonna go ahead and kick up to the wall in an organized fashion. He's gonna think about hands being about 10 inches away from the wall. Hands are slightly turned out. And in this position, I want legs together and I want toes pointed. We're gonna be thinking about making a nice organized position. And this is what his handstand walk is going to look like when we get off the wall. He's gonna come off the wall by taking one leg off straight, and that pulls his body down. I can't stress enough that before you try to attempt any of the drills that we're doing, I really want you to practice the mount and dismount, because you're gonna be coming up and off the wall a lot. And if you've got a bad dismount, you're gonna jam those toes, you're not gonna feel good, you're gonna tweak your knees, and you're not gonna wanna do this skill. So this is the first piece. The second piece is that when you're upside down, we need nice controlled breaths. Our body's upside down, so things are pressing in a different way than when we're standing here. So you gotta get used to being in that upside down position and getting rid of that head rush. You do that by those nice deep breaths. The next thing that we're gonna do is that we are going to face the wall again, and we're gonna talk about where we're gonna load in our hands. So I'm gonna have TJ kick up to the wall. And in this position, what we're thinking about doing is that our weight needs to be in our mid hand right here. We think about our fingertips being our toes and this being the heel of our foot. Go ahead and come down. So if we use that and we look at our hand, our weight when we're upside down is gonna be balanced through this part of our palm. If we're doing a freestanding handstand and we're trying to practice that, that's where our weight's gonna be. If I use TJ, he puts his feet together, and we're gonna think about his toes being his fingers and the heel of his foot being the heel of his hand. If TJ starts leaning too far forward, he has to push those toes into the floor to balance himself. If he's too far back, there's not a lot of control that we have. That's why it's so easy to come down from a handstand walk when we kick up if we don't kick up enough. So what he's gonna do is he's gonna turn and face the wall. We're gonna kick up into our nice organized position, long legs, point our toes. And from here, with his feet on the wall, he's gonna start pressing his fingers into the floor, and you can see that pulls his body away from the wall. What TJ's gonna do is he's gonna kick up and he's gonna try to find a balance point to where he can maintain his balance on his own, pressing those fingers into the floor. And then you see that starts to pull those heels off the wall. And we want to work on trying to figure out where we need to be. This is like learning to walk all over again when you were a baby, taking your first steps. These are your first handstand steps. So we got to take it slow because it's not going to happen overnight. Now, at the same time that we're practicing doing this fingertip drill, we can alternate back and forth between this drill and then also learning how to load. You're gonna hear me make some animal comparisons because it's a good visual for what you need to do when you're getting upside down. So when we are attempting to handstand walk, I want you to channel your inner penguin on this. And what I mean by that is that when we are going into a handstand walk, we have to shift our weight back and forth like this, which is if you put your hands by your side, you look just like a penguin. Now, the example that I use here is that a lot of times people will get good at getting upside down, but they can't shift their weight. And this is what happens. And you can practice this with us right now so that you can kind of understand proof of concept. If I don't shift my weight at all, it's like me trying to pick my foot up and stand on one leg. So if I don't shift my weight and I pick up, that's all I have because I start to fall towards the place where I'm not loaded anymore. Now, if I shift my weight over to one leg, I can keep this up as long as I need to, and I can do the same thing on the other side. It's the same thing as when we get upside down. So if you're one of those people that when you're walking, you have to like slide your hands forward, it's because there's no shift in your hips. So what this looks like is that TJ is gonna kick up to the wall. Nice organized position again. So point his toes, legs are together, and he starts to move these hips side to side. And what you can see is this allows him to start picking his hands up and go ahead and come down. And when we get into this drill, you have seen this before where people will take one hand off the floor and try to do shoulder taps. They'll try to touch the opposite shoulder. That's a great goal to work towards. It'll give you an extra piece that you can do and really focus on shifting those hips. It's not necessary to get into your handstand walking, but you do need to be able to shift and clearly pull that hand away from the floor in a controlled fashion before we start trying to work away from the wall. When we're going on these, again, your breathing is gonna be super important because now I got you thinking about something else besides your breathing. You're gonna start holding your breath. So please, you're gonna hear me say it multiple times, but I need you to breathe. That is arguably the most important thing to being an athlete and a human being, but that's besides the point. So now what we're gonna do is that we've got our 2 drills of working on fingertips and loading side to side. We're gonna step away from the wall, and this is when we feel like we've got a decent amount of control. We're not really scared about falling out of a handstand. We can control it down, control it up. What TJ's gonna do is that we started about 10 inches away from the wall. I'm gonna have TJ start about 2 feet away from the wall, and what this is gonna create is, and you need to practice where you're kicking up, make a chalk line if you need to. I want him far enough away from the wall so that if he over kicks, he can still make contact with the wall. He's not gonna fall over. But it is enough room so now he can take a couple practice steps to the wall into his handstand. So go ahead and kick up. Take a couple steps. He makes contact and now he can come down. I'm gonna have TJ go again and we're gonna keep those legs together and point our toes. We're gonna make it look pretty this time. We're gonna kick up, point, 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 point. Good. And so as we're going through, this brings up a very interesting point, and something that I like to note is that TJ does a lot of handstand walking. He's got a gymnastics background. When you see him handstand walk in a workout, he does the scorpion position of hooking those legs over because it does create additional momentum. When you're learning this skill, we want you to learn it very organized and very controlled, because it's not saying that that's a bad way to do it, but I'm not gonna have you kip before I can get you to strict, and it's the same thing here. I want nice long lines like in gymnastics. Again, Pamela Gagnon would be very proud of me saying this. We gotta make it look good so that you can perform good. After you get into that and you learn how to do the nice organized lines, if you want to utilize that hooked over leg, it gives you more momentum forward. However, I will always cue you to make it look good. So we're going to kick up one more time. TJ's going to demo one more time with our nice long lines, pointing our toes, getting our legs together, taking those steps to the wall. We controlled and then we come down. So that is going to be your final piece that you're going to do before you start practicing away from the wall. Now, our next one, you're gonna need a spotter for this one. And this is gonna take a large amount of trust between the athlete and the spotter because it's very easy to get kicked in the face. It's happened to me once, but it wasn't personal, it was an accident, or at least that's what they said. So we're gonna take a look at what this is gonna be. So I'm gonna have TJ stand here for me. I'm gonna act as the spotter. Now, so that you know what's gonna happen on this drill, TJ's gonna kick up. I'm gonna place a hand in front so that he has basically a wall to kick to. And once he's in this position, I'm gonna place another hand on the back side of his legs. My goal as the spotter is not to hold him in place, but now I've created kind of a little like bouncy jumper that he can walk around the house in with control. So I'm gonna help him find his balance away from the wall, and this is starting to build some confidence without having this. So what we're gonna do is that when TJ kicks up, he has to keep those legs together, because if they go wild, that's when I get kicked in the face. So we're gonna go ahead and kick up. I support, and I'm pressing on his legs now to help him find his balance point. I'm gonna let him balance. He's using those fingertips to practice finding his balance point. When he's ready to come down, he can bring his leg down, and that's it. Now, this also brings up another side point. When you're working with a spotter, figure out which leg your athlete likes to come down with. And the reason I say that is you got a strong side and you got a not so strong side. So you always know that when you kick up, you like to come down with that left leg or that right leg. If I'm hanging on to TJ's legs and I've got his left leg in my hand and then he wants to come down with that left leg, I force him to come down with the right. It's super awkward. He could tweak something, so we want to make sure that we get that communication down. Every time that TJ comes down, I've noticed that his left leg is the one that likes to come down, and that's gonna be super important on our next piece that we do. So I provided a very heavy amount of support for TJ when he first kicked up so he could find his balance point. And then you saw that he started to get his balance and move around to where he didn't need as much assistance. Again, you have to keep those legs together and we have to point our toes. Now our final drill that we do before we start practicing kicking up away from the spotter or the wall is that we're gonna go into the same spotting technique, but you're gonna see me shift and then putting my hands as cups to support his legs, but he's still gonna be bouncing on his own. We're gonna scoot back just a little bit so we have a little bit of room to walk here. So what's gonna happen is that TJ's gonna kick up, I'm gonna help him balance, and then you'll see me shift and place my hands on his legs. So let's go ahead and kick up. From here, I'm gonna shift, I'm holding on. Now I'm gonna let him lean into my hands, open palm grip, and he can walk, he can come down. Good, and we came down with the right side, so he completely disproved what I said before. But it's a good thing that I did not hold on to his ankles. If I held on to his ankles, that would force him into a position that he wasn't comfortable coming down from. So with this as the spotter, I wanna make sure that I'm not about to step on his fingers when he goes up, and I wanna encourage him to keep those legs together and stay organized. It may be easier for you to go up and kind of have your legs splayed, but I'm telling you, you will have so much more control when those legs are together. The next thing that we have is that we're gonna go ahead and let TJ go into a little bit of handstand walking on his own. We're gonna have those toes pointed and legs together. When you're ready, TJ, go ahead. So again, he's staying nice and organized. He's letting that weight shift towards his fingertips. Now, as we're going into this, I got another animal analogy for you. We got the penguin out of the way to get our weight shifted back and forth. The next one is, I want you to think of your favorite big jungle cat. So I usually use a jaguar for this, but we think about when we watch a cat walk, we think about those big pads of their paws going on the floor and rolling off. So as we get on the floor, we're gonna take it down to the floor for just a second so you can see this. I'm thinking about as I place my hand, I'm gonna roll off onto my fingertips. If I'm thinking about just placing a hand and picking up, that gives me a lot more risk of coming down versus keeping that forward momentum of rolling towards my fingertips. So I need you to do, who's in the Jungle Book? Shere Khan, or it's the, I need a jaguar, give me a jaguar. So think about rolling off onto your fingertips, especially if you're the type of athlete who can do a couple steps, but then you always come down. That rolling technique will hopefully give you kind of the tactile feedback that you need so that you can stay in a good position and keep the momentum going. Now, the last thing that we cover here is that talking about when we come out of a handstand. So if you over kick and you feel like you're gonna fall over, we have to think about shifting our hands. So when we go up into this position, I've gone too far, I think about turning my hand in so that they're facing each other, and that will allow me to come out into a semi-cartwheel on this. I'm gonna step out of the way so TJ can kick up, and it's gonna be difficult for him to over kick, but we'll see if we can get a bad rep so that he can do a good dismount. So go ahead and kick up, over kick, and then we swing that hand out, and then we come down into that semi-cartwheel. This is something that we would highly encourage you to practice a few cartwheels if you've never done them before, because if not, you're gonna get into a weird position where all your body weight's on your hands and you open up the potential for injury there. So we always like to prepare for the worst and expect the best when we're doing these movements. So this covers everything for your handstand walking beginnings to taking your first steps to going your first marathon on your hands. We thank you so much for joining us. Remember, stay kind, be good, stay kind, and join us again for another great day of fitness.